Hi, this is Sam Jones, and I'm doing what I hope will be a pretty quick introduction to distance from camera. Now, a normal render of this scene looks like this. Now we want to give it a little bit of a drawn effect, so we use Freestyle. This is in the tab Render Properties. A little television, I think. Anyway, run another render, and it looks pretty good. However, if you take this camera and you move it much farther away and you render the same scene, it starts to look a little clumsy, and the further away you go, the worse those same width lines look on the same figure. So what would be nice, and I have to credit Pop of Africa from the webcomic creators Discord from suggesting this, is if you have a filter that controls how wide something is from the distance from the camera. And so I found out there is a way to do that. It's here. This tab is called View Layer Properties, and there's an entire section for Freestyle. And you can have multiple line sets with different rules. And for instance, usually I have one that just grabs the silhouette of objects and a separate one that grabs material borders. The material borders has a little shakiness to give it a more hand-drawn look, to make some rigid borders look less rigid. So if you go down to the bottom of this, usually by default this one is closed, but Freestyle Line Style, and there's several tabs here, and you want thickness. And what we want is a modifier. And the modifier we want is distance from camera. Now, distance from camera by default does a kind of odd thing, is that the lines are thicker the further away from camera they are. And there might be a time that you want that, but I don't know what it would be, really. So invert, and what you have down here is a minimum value, like the thinnest lines will ever be. So if something is super far from the camera, what's the least width of the line? And usually I want something like 0.5. What's the thickest they can be? And this depends on what style you're going for. I'm going to suggest we go with something like 0.4. And the range minimum is how close we are before we get this maximum line size, since we're inverted, and how far we go before we go down to the minimum. And the distance is measured, I think, in these squares you see right here. So let's say range minimum of about 1 square and range maximum, I almost never want to go anything like that, of 10 squares. Now this depends on the scale that you're working with. Actually, let's go farther. Yeah, 10 squares, sure. So this means that if we get pretty close and let's go up a little bit and we do a render and we get the same thick lines that we had before, but we go a long way away, a good distance from the figure. We do a render again, and the lines get much smaller. And maybe we'd want our maximum range further than this, like 20, so that we're still having more lines at this range. And that looks pretty good to me. And you could change how small they go. You could make 0 to make lines don't disappear entirely at this kind of distance. Or you could do this, which I don't think would be thin enough. That it's not too bad from here, but if you did something like here, it'd become a problem again, I think. It's a little messy. The problem with the lines getting messy gets worse the thicker an object you're dealing with. So I hope that worked out well. I hope this is helpful, and thank you very much.